Friends, it is time to talk about season 12 of Degrassi. In this season, we finally see the reversal of the uniform policy. And there is a new hockey team that brings in quite a few new students. And that includes Dallas, who's staying with Adam and Drew, Cam, who is in ninth grade and staying with a boarding family far away from his home, and Luke and his not twin sister Becky, who are both very Christian. And at the end of the season, we also see Eli, Marisol, Katie, Mo, Jake, Bianca, and Fiona graduate. Let's talk about Fiona in season 12 of Degrassi. I would say that overall, Fiona had a really great season. And with this being her final season, she has definitely grown a lot since the first time we've seen her. This season, she takes on a leadership role by becoming co-president of student council. We also see her get a job at a smoothie place in order for her to stay at her loft and pay her bills. Now, her relationship with Imogen was good. You know, they had their ups, they had their downs, but they were always able to come together and work things out. Now, with Fiona going away to school and Imogen not, they do decide to break up at graduation of all places, because they just felt like it was best for them to part ways at that time. It was really great to see the transformation of Fiona throughout her time in the series. In the end, she became this confident leader who became more sure and more confident of herself. And in the end, she was valedictorian. Let's talk about Imogen in season 12 of Degrassi. We're introduced to Imogen's parents this season, and she actually had it pretty rough. This season, Imogen finds out that her dad was diagnosed with early onset dementia, and throughout the season, we see him just getting worse, and Imogen trying really hard to take care of him, but because she's a high school student and not a nurse, it's extremely difficult for her. And we also learn that her parents are divorced and that she does not have a wonderful relationship with her mother. But because of the progression of her dad's illness, her mother ends up getting a caretaker for him, and Imogen has to move in with her mom. And this is where they start to mend their relationship, and by the end of the season, it's in a better place. But then unfortunately, Imogen learns that she's basically failing all of her classes because she skipped so much school to help out with her dad, and she can't graduate with all of her friends. And so now she's stuck back at Degrassi for another year, basically like how Fiona was when all of her friends graduated. And that's where we end the season with Imogen. So let's talk about Claire in season 12 of Degrassi. I want to focus this video on Claire's internship because unfortunately she experiences what it's like to be a woman in a professional space with a scumbag man for a boss. So we know that Claire wants to be a journalist, and so she gets this internship at a well-known paper, and the man who is her boss is basically her idol. And so she tries really, really hard to impress him and, you know, stays late in the office, and he ends up letting her be able to write an article for the paper. And of course, she kind of obsesses over it and wants it to be perfect, and even goes into the office and stays really late with him to work on it. Now, with them spending more time together, this man decides to try and kiss her on more than one occasion. And of course, she rejects him. But then he threatens her, and immediately, like, he goes to HR and tries to put the blame on her when she tries to rectify the situation with HR. And so she makes a scene, and of course, she loses her internship. Now, instead of her going and telling her teacher about this, she decides that she's gonna find proof so she can get him fired, and tries to investigate and find other people. And when that falls through, she goes as far as almost posting nudes onto his computer. But then she comes to her senses and she doesn't do it, and someone does come forward to help her. Now, at the very end of the season, at prom, she's getting ready, and Allie ends up finding a bump on her back. She goes to the doctor about it, and she needs a biopsy. And that's where we leave Claire at the end of this season. Let's talk about Allie in season 12 of Degrassi. Early in the season, Allie is working on this advanced project in the science lab, and Mr. Simpson ends up setting up a meeting with someone that he knows from MIT. And Allie gets offered a scholarship, but she has to fast track her year and try and graduate at the end in order for her to use the scholarship and go to MIT next year. So she decides to do that, and it is a ton of work that she has to do, and she really doesn't have a lot of time for a social life. But things do get serious with Dave, and at one point she thinks that she's pregnant, but she ends up not being pregnant, and then she ends up breaking up with Dave so she doesn't have any distractions from her work in order to graduate. And then because of the amount of work that she has to get through, she's basically pulling all-nighters and is super tired. So she decides to start taking pills in order for her to stay awake so she can complete all of her work and still be awake for school. But of course, that does not end well because she decides to come off the pills. She goes out for a night of fun, having not slept for, I think, like 3 days, and falls asleep at the wheel and gets into a car accident. So she decides that fast tracking it is not a good plan for her and that she should just complete the rest of high school like normal and apply to MIT and hopes to get another scholarship next year. And now that I think of it, this is probably the first season where Allie is not completely obsessed and focused on boys. Let's talk about Jenna in season 12 of Degrassi. This season, Jenna becomes friends with Becky, and that's even after Becky basically tricked her into coming over to her house to sing for her church's youth night. Jenna also starts getting close to Becky's brother Luke, and they kiss, but Luke is all like, I can't date you. It's not right for me to be with you because you're not a Christian, and he knows about her past with giving up the baby. And yeah, says all that nonsense. And so Jenna thinks it's a good idea for her to join their church and get baptized, pretty much in order for her to be with Luke. But she learns that Luke was basically just saying all of that stuff so he doesn't have to be in a committed relationship. But Jenna does admit that she had been feeling lost and that she was looking for a path. And she basically has this moment with Allie's mom where she says, maybe if God has a plan for my life, I want to know what it is. And Allie's mom encourages her to continue on that path. And so she decides to stay at Becky's church. Later in the season, Jenna does agree to go on a date with Connor, and it's actually a really cute date. And so they start to date. And these two are very much so an unlikely pair, but I really do think that they work. Let's talk really quick about Casey in season 12 of Degrassi. So this season, Casey's dad is getting out of jail and wants to start seeing him again. And it is a stark difference between when his mom got out. Now it starts looking like they're going to be this happy family again. His dad even gets a job and he helps him with his resume on that. But we quickly learn that his dad isn't interested in staying sober and he starts drinking again. And Casey's mom even has a drink too. And Casey's mom decides that it's not good to have their dad around anymore. So they stop letting him stay there, but he continues to harass them and they end up having to call the cops on him. But they realize that he's just going to keep doing this over and over again and harassing them. And so they decide that they have to get out of Toronto and they move to British Columbia. And that's the last time we see Casey. I think it's really sad that he had to leave, but I do know that it was what's best for him and his mom. I just wish that we could have seen him graduate. Let's talk about Eli in season 12 of Degrassi. So Eli starts this season basically wanting to be in charge of the entire theater department as he wants to be a director when he goes to college. But newcomer Becky beats him to it. And so now they have to try to work together on the musical. But Becky quickly decides that it's not something that she can be a part of and quits. The play does end up turning out really well, and he is able to mend things with Becky. Things are also going really well for Eli as he starts dating Claire again, and the relationship is much better than it was when they were going out before. But then there was an incident with Cam, which I will talk about later, and Eli does not take it well at all. And he is continually smoking pot with Jake, and he ends up going to this secret party and starts taking MDMA. He was just not coping well with the situation, and Claire wasn't helping him any better because she just wanted to talk and tell him how he felt, and he didn't need that. And so he decided to break up with her so they can get some space. They do end up getting back together because he is totally miserable being broken up with her. And he tries a couple times, but in the end, it does work and they do get back together at prom. And he also gets into NYU. And so we do see Eli leave Degrassi on a high note. Let's talk about Adam in season 12 of Degrassi. This season, Adam goes through a lot of relationship woes as he starts crushing on Becky. Now, at first, she reciprocates those feelings, but then she finds out that he's trans and has a huge issue with it. But then she works through it and they decide to date. And when she introduces him to his parents and lets them know about him being trans, that does not make them happy. And Becky's dad even suggests that he goes to one of those camps, which is absolutely ridiculous. You shouldn't be doing that to a minor and not in that way. And so they try secretly dating, but then Becky kind of like takes a step back and says that she's confused and they break up. Now, I just feel bad for Adam because he's so unlucky in the relationship department. But then he does end the season on a bit of a high note as he's able to meet his idol Chaz Bono at Battle of the Bands competition that his band was entered in. So at least there was some good that came out of this season with Adam. Friends, let's talk about Bianca and Drew in season 12 of Degrassi. Let's focus on Drew for a little bit right now because yes, he does get back with Bianca this year, but he also suffers a concussion and does not do anything to get help until it's too late. And so he kind of has to take this huge step back. He can't play sports or anything like that. And because his brain needs time to heal, he feels really dumb in school. And so he decides to just drop out and get a job at this kiosk at the mall. And he even moves out of his house because, of course, his mom does not agree with this. And he starts living with Fiona. And after some time, he does feel left out because Bianca is in school doing stuff with her friends, and Drew really can't even be on the premises because he's not a student there, and he basically feels like a loser. And so he mends things with his mom and moves back home, and he even enrolls back in school. And this is where it gets wild because his love for Bianca, their love for each other is just so strong that Drew decides to propose to her, and they decide to go off to Vegas and get married. And of course, his mom does not approve of this, so he lies to her about it. But then he gets cold feet and calls her in Vegas, and she comes to stop everything from happening. So the two of them don't get married, but they do stay engaged. Meanwhile, Bianca is doing amazing in school, and she's going to graduate, and she gets into college. Drew being back at school, but not being able to do contact sports, he doesn't really know what to do with himself. So Bianca pushes him to run for student council president. He doesn't take it seriously at first, but then he does. And then he wins. And so that's where we leave those two. Let's talk about Katie in season 12 of Degrassi. Katie also had it pretty rough this season as she gets back from rehab and Drew horribly breaks up with her. And so she posts a video of him drunk during a school assembly for the hockey team and ruins it and completely loses her presidency because of it. So then we see her start hanging out with Jake and they start this community garden at the school. And she starts dating Jake and things are going pretty great for her. Her and Marisol are able to double date and hang out with their boyfriends together. Then she finds out that she gets into Stanford, but because of the cost of the school, her mother says that she probably won't be able to go. So for spring break, because they couldn't go to Mexico like they had planned, she decides that they should go to Vegas and she decides to gamble her life savings in order to get school pay, but she gambles it all away. Then she meets the owner of Face Range in Vegas and he says he'll give her money if she basically acts like his girlfriend for the whole day and even promises her more money if she sleeps with him. And she almost does, but she comes to her senses and leaves. But this cost her relationship with Jake. And so we basically see her trying to hang out with Maya and her friends because things are so awkward because Mo and Marisol are together and Mo is best friends with Jake and Katie and Jake are not on good terms. But things do end well for her as she decides to take out small loans, get a job, so she can afford to go to Stanford. Let's talk about Cam in season 12 of Degrassi. Cam is a newcomer and he comes to Degrassi while being on the hockey team, the Ice Hounds. Now, there is a lot of pressure put onto him with the team because he's expected to be this star player. So all of his teammates are basically relying on him so their season can be successful. But Cam is away from home and he's super homesick, but he also really doesn't enjoy hockey in a way that people think that he does. In fact, he basically hates it and goes as far as injuring himself so he doesn't have to play. But when he heals, all of that pressure comes back onto him, and we start to really see that he is really, really depressed. And he does end up taking his own life. And this really rocks the school. Of course, Simpson handles it as best as he can with, stopping classes, offering counselors, and things like that during the school day. But there are quite a few people who are connected to Cam other than Maya, like Dallas, who his last moment was screaming at him, and Allie was his tutor, and Eli was the one that found him. And so this moment really rocks the school. You really have to commend the show for taking the time to carefully show the characters going through their grieving process. Let's talk about Maya in season 12 of Degrassi. Maya deals with a lot of boy drama this season. She starts off dating Cam, but then they go through some issues where Cam doesn't really express interest in her and she's like throwing herself at him. And so they go on a break. During that time, Maya enters this beauty pageant with Tori in order for her to feel comfortable in her body and get more confidence. And through that, Zig is there to give her encouragement, and then they kiss. But Maya decides that she wants to get back with Cam, and so they do. But Zig is all like, he's gonna break up with Tori because he wants to get with Maya. And when Maya tells him that she's gonna stay with Cam, he is basically like, I'm gonna wait for you. Tori does eventually find out about the kiss, and that basically ends her relationship with Zig. Now, after the whole Cam situation, Maya starts acting in a way where other people just don't expect her to act like that. She starts to change up her look a bit. She starts making out with random guys, and she does end up posting a video of that on the internet. Meanwhile, everyone is acting her to be super sad and grieving, but she really is angry, but she wasn't given the time to process and understand her feelings until after she went down that unfortunate path. And that's where we leave Maya at the end of season 12.